That's the trailer for Selma. It's been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Film in 2014. We're joined right now by Ava DuVernay, the film's director. Welcome to Democracy Now! Congratulations on the nomination.
If the nomination gets me here sitting with you, then hooray. I love the show, love you. Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations for the Golden Globes.
Thank you.
But you didn't get nominated, and there are a lot of people all over this country who have seen this film and are shocked that you weren't nominated for Best Director. Your thoughts on this?
You know, I didn't expect to be. I actually knew that it wasn't going to happen. I've been telling people since October, no one listened to me. I'm serious. Old interviews that are coming out now, friends who said, yeah, you did say that. I just knew it wasn't going to be the case, so I never took it into my heart, so it didn't really bother me. I was more bothered by David not being nominated. That hurt my feelings because I know what the beautiful performance, but it's
David Oyelowo.
David Oyelowo, the star of the film who plays Dr. King. But the bottom line is the film was chosen in some categories. Best Picture, Best Song were nominated and wasn't chosen in others. And
that's common in John Legend.
That's common in John Legend for the Song for Glory, and Best Picture, which is nothing to sneeze at. Nothing to sneeze at. So,
So you know this hashtag, the Twitter hashtag #OscarsSoWhite, that began trending soon after the nominees were announced. So many people shocked that your name wasn't among them, and David's as well. Pointing out that a 2012 survey conducted by the Los Angeles Times found Oscar voters are 94% white, 76% male, and the average age 63 years old. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I think folks see film, see history, see art, see life through their own lens. And when there's a consensus that has to be made by a certain group, the consensus is most likely going to be through a specific lens. And unless there's diversity amongst the people that are trying to come to a consensus, then, there'll be a lack of diversity in what the consensus is, if that makes sense. So I think, being here at Sundance is a great example of a group, of an organization that's made a commitment to diversity, that have considered diversity as more than a talking point, but an action item. I won Best Director here in 2012, but I was the first Black person to do so. So it was a long time coming, and that being,
that was for Middle of Nowhere.
That was for Middle of Nowhere. But there's been a real articulated kind of mission by the Institute, by the Sundance Institute, to say regardless of awards, we're going to be a platform, we're going to be a space for voices of all kinds all over the world, and they've articulated that mission and they've executed, and they're continuing to execute. And so I think when you talk about the Academy, or you talk about just the industry in general, the studios, everyone needs to, if we really care about it, not just say we care about it, but actually work towards it. And so perhaps all of the hoopla this year will trigger some action, but maybe not, I don't know.
No person of color, not only for Best Director, no person of color, as you point out, for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Supporting Actor.
This year.
This year.
This year. In past years we've had it. But the bottom line is I don't think the question is so much about the awards. The question is, why was Selma the only film that was even in the running with people of color for the award? You know what I mean? I mean, why are there not just Black, brown people, Asian people, indigenous people, representations that are more than just one voice, just one face, just one gaze. So for me, it's much less about the awards and the accolades, because literally next year no one cares, right? I can't even tell you who won the award for whatever 3 years ago. I don't know.
What are the obstacles in the way?
The obstacle, it's systemic. It's systemic. It's a system that's been set up in a certain way. Times have changed, ideas have matured, and the system might not have caught up with that or stayed up with that. But you have very conscious people, very, liberal people, very progressive people within the Academy. I'm a member. I was invited a couple of years ago. My Black cinematographer, Bradford Young, was invited this year. There's an attempt, but, like I said, it needs to be articulated and followed up on. I think the thing that is challenging is when people talk about it should happen, but then there's no follow-up to that. So the hope is with Cheryl Boone Isaacs, who's the new president of the Academy, and some other people there who are really intentional about wanting to see just an opening up. It's not about Selma. Maybe people just didn't like it. You know what I mean? Maybe they just didn't like it. But it's really more about Selma shouldn't have been the only hope for places of color in, you know, in this kind of celebration.
Well, you're clearly very self-deprecating because Selma has been received with critical acclaim. And speaking of obstacles, let's go back 50 years.
Yeah, right.
To the man and the movement,
That's
the
right.
many people that you portray in Selma, which isn't a documentary, a feature film, taking on a massive obstacle in the United States, the fact that African Americans were not voting, could not vote. Tell us the story of Selma.
Well, let me tell you this. I don't feel like I'm self-deprecating. I feel like I stand in the shadow of giants, real, bold, brave Americans of color who, and otherwise, all kinds of people who marched for something that was really important. I mean, this, when we get to the statues and patting each other on the back, isn't as important as the fact that the dismantling of the Voting Rights Act is violent and ongoing and very much an emergency. So in working with Selma and thinking about all of the, what it represents, even now with policing and police aggression in our communities, I just can't get worked up about the other thing. So that's that piece. But Selma is a story of justice and dignity. It's about these everyday people. That's what I loved about it, that it wasn't called King, that when I came onto the project, it was called Selma. It's about the power of the people. It's about voices risen and amplified through this one man. But one of the things I loved about our approach to Selma was that, you know, we didn't show King in isolation, which I think has been so much a part of, you know, this really homogenized view of him, which I think he would have hated, because it was very much always trying to amplify the people around him. He was always very deferential to his comrades, you know, fellow soldiers in the fight. And so I think he would be, because at the time he was bothered by the fact that he was the one lifted up.
And why did you choose to take this on?
Well, it's King, you know what I mean? It's King, it's King. I've said in past interviews, in previous years, why do we always have to see black people in hindsight? Why are the Hollywood movies always historical? What about the contemporary image of black people, which is something that I'm very activist about? But then someone brings you King, a King story, and it's like, okay, you know what I mean? I mean, it had not been done in 50 years. There's been no major motion picture released by a studio, no independent motion picture in theaters with King at the center in the 50 years since these events happened. When we have biopics on all kinds of ridiculous people and nothing on King, no cinematic representation that's meaningful and centered. So it was just something I couldn't pass up. And my father's from Lowndes County, Alabama, so that's the county right between Selma and Montgomery where they walked through. And he's from that place, and he watched the march pass at 11 years old. So it's part of my family history.
That's Ava DuVernay, director of Selma. Her film has just been nominated for an Oscar for Best Film. Coming up, I ask the director about the controversy around Selma's portrayal of President Lyndon Johnson and his relationship with Dr. King. The film depicts President Johnson as a reluctant, even obstructionist politician who had the FBI monitor and harass King. We also talk with Ava DuVernay about her plans for her next film. All that and more is coming up.